Welcome to the 33rd installment of ESPN The Honolulu Fan Friday Talk Story. I'm your host, Tiff Wells. With me today, he was a first-team All-WAC selection back in 2007 on the defensive line from Rainbow Warrior football and a proud Farrington High School alum, Mike Lafaele. Mike, welcome to Talk Story.
What's up, Tiff? Thank you, man. Nice to be on the show. Appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us, Mike. Now, first off, Rainbow Warrior fans saw you last on the field in 2007. What have you been up to since graduation?
Been through a lot, actually. I've been working. I think right after I graduated, got into the medical sales field and kind of stayed in that, made it a career. So that's something that I've been involved in, a field that I've been involved in since graduation. About a year out from playing football and graduating with my degree, I was able to, land a pretty good job in the medical sales field. So super blessed for that. And then, right now, also currently coaching at St. Louis High School. That's where my son goes. He's a freshman. So I've been coaching there for a couple of years, but prior to that, I was also coaching at Iolani. Had a lot of good experiences there. I shared a lot of memories there with a bunch of the coaching staff there. But football's in your blood. And once you play the sport and you just have a passion for it. So couldn't play it any longer, so I decided to coach it.
You mentioned football is in your blood, and former Rainbow Warrior running back, one of your really good friends, Nady Lawa. You two basically began a new company the last year or so. What is it called, and what's it all about?
So it's Ikaika Athletics. It's basically a training facility that we opened up in Kakako. So myself and Nate, and then also my partner, Coach Alan Ichinose, who is the owner of Ikaika Fitness Factory. It was formerly Kakako Fitness, but he reopened it and called it Ikaika Fitness. And last year, during COVID, it was kind of a scary thing to pursue and open up a new business, especially in fitness when gyms were closed. No one was out, doing anything, working out in public and stuff. So it was a scary thing to engage, but with God's blessing, we were able to get that company formed and running. Basically, it's just, two guys, a bunch of guys who love football. And, we've been coaching young athletes, from when we were done playing. Like literally after I graduated, there's a bunch of kids that I just started training. Parents knew who I were and asked if I could help, help their kids on the field. And I said, yeah, I'd love to do it. So I've been doing it behind the scenes at parks for years now. And it came to the point where it was taking up a lot of time with my family and stuff. And so sat down with my wife and, we really prayed about it. And it was something that we wanted to pursue and have our own place, because for the longest time I was, going finding open parks where I could train a bunch of kids and dragging all my equipment and stuff. And it was becoming time consuming, super frustrating. And so we were fortunate enough and blessed to open up a facility in Kakako. The location is awesome. And so basically at our facility, we just train athletes, guys who love football and want to, get better. So put together a pretty good program where they kind of get everything done in one spot in Kakako. So
we've talked about the present. Let's go back into the past. You come from a family that you also have 3 brothers. You have 3 siblings. Of the 4, who's the most athletic?
I'll give some hesitation there, but there's no question of who's the most athletic amongst me and my brothers. I think at one point my older brother was just a year older than me. He was looking like he was gonna be one of the guys, and then I kind of sprung out ahead of him in that race where, because my older brother was always really, really strong. And if you grew up in Cali and went to Farrington, the bench press was one of those things that was huge, right? If you could bench a lot, then it carried a lot of weight. And my brother is one of those guys. So at Farrington, there was in the weight room, and I haven't been there in a while, but if you go into the weight room, they have these boards, right, that have clubs, right? So there's a 300-pound bench press, 400-pound bench press, and then the other club is 100-pound over, which was if you can bench 100 pounds over your weight. And my brother was on all 3 of them. He broke all 3 of those. So his face is on all 3 boards. And not too many guys can do that at Farrington because I'm only on two of them, the 300 and 400 pound bench press, where my brother was on all three of them. So I think at one point,
2 out of 3 is not bad, right?
Not bad, but my brother was on all three. So he might argue with me, but I mean, present, past, and future, there's no question.
Was it always football as a kid when you were growing up, or were there other sports that you played besides football?
Growing up in Collegiate, I was born and raised in Collegiate Park Terrace, and you just play whatever, necessarily. We love football. I mean, if you grew up in KPT and some of the housing kids in Camp 4 and Merritt Heights, I mean, football is something everyone loves, right? As a kid growing up. But man, we basically played everything. We would go to school. I remember being at Dole Intermediate, and we didn't have a football. We couldn't bring our own balls to school, and so we would literally play with our slippers. Our slippers were our football, and so you would have all of us, like, we would break our slippers, and so the football slipper would break it, and then we'll use your slipper this time. So you have all these kids, right? And at lunchtime with ripped shirts and no slippers on, man, no shoes. Because we played with anything, man. And so I think football, though, definitely was. And then when I got to high school, it was football and wrestling. They were my two, sports that I loved. I could have played basketball, but I sucked. I couldn't get the ball in the hoop. And so I ended up just running up and down the court, which I should just play track or do track because all I was doing was running. And I couldn't play volleyball because I couldn't jump high enough to get the ball over the net and be successful on the court. So I went to wrestling. Initially, I didn't want to wrestle, but my JV coach at Farrington was also our head coach for wrestling. And after my freshman year playing football, he said, if you want to be a better football player, go and wrestle. And that's all I needed to hear because I really loved the sport, football. And my freshman year, I was okay at it. But I believed my coach and I trusted my coach, and I went and wrestled. And I didn't want to do it. And the reason why is because you have to wear the singlet, right? You have to wear those singlets. And I was a heavyweight. And I'm like, man, I really don't want to wear those things. But I did it anyways. I trusted what my coach said, and I trusted the process. And, by the time my sophomore year came around, I was in way better shape than I was the year before. So football and wrestling, man.
2-part question here about mom. Was she hesitant about you going out for football? And also, with her being a very good cook, what were some of your favorite dishes growing up that she would make?
Okay, so my mom, no, she wasn't. She actually encouraged us to go out and play sports. I mean, like I said, we were doing it every day anyways. We were like tackling each other without a football. So growing up, that wasn't an issue. She was totally fine with it. She encouraged us. She wanted us to get out and play sports anyways. And then my mom's, and growing up in the housing, we didn't have a whole lot of steak dinners. So I think one of the staples in our house was corned beef, which is kind of funny, right? When you think about Polynesians. But my mom used to make everything with corned beef, But one of the things I didn't like, and I was just sharing this story with somebody the other day too, was my mom would put onions in everything. And I don't know, for some reason, when I was growing up, I just remember hating onions, like to the point where I would barf if I ate an onion. But yeah, that's my funny story about my mom's. So corned beef, man, that was a staple. I guess that's why they say that's the steroids for Polynesians. Just got to eat corned beef.
You mentioned growing up in Kalihi, part of KPT. Describe for us those Friday nights as you wore the maroon and white for Farrington and playing football for your hometown team.
Yeah, it was. I remember going out for football, playing JV my freshman sophomore year, and we got a little bit of that experience, right? Friday night lights and what it truly meant. But I remember my first game as a freshman playing, and then after that we stayed. I think it was at Roosevelt. We stayed to watch the varsity play. And man, it's an experience that I'll never forget. And you just fall in love with football after that because just an energy, right? That's at a high school football game. And I remember being at Roosevelt, which was our home field at the time. It was packed. I mean, it was packed, especially for a season opener. I mean, the band's playing, the cheerleaders are out, everyone's having a great time, and it's just a lot of good football on the field. But playing for the home team, when I didn't really understand it fully until I got to Farrington and I was there, and you understand like there's a lot of pride within that program. Just because, a lot of the big time names of, athletes that came out of that school. And so growing up, freshman, sophomore year, I was like, man, that's when I used to watch guys, the varsity guys play. I was like, man, that's going to be me in a couple of years, man. I'm going to be one of those guys making big time plays and, winning football games and, just getting the crowd going. So I think for me, it was, you fall in love, going to a football game, especially at Farrington, where the fans and just the whole community, they just have a lot of pride in their team and their players. So I was really blessed by that.
Two of the big time names out of Farrington, and of course, one being Mike Lafaele, but the two main coaches when you think about Farrington football, Randall Okimoto and also Skippa Diaz.
Yeah.
How cool was it in 2017? Because you never got to play a home game. You never had a home stadium to play a varsity football game, but how cool was it to, as you now drive by the facility, that Skippa Diaz Stadium is now there on campus and Farrington finally has its own home football stadium?
Mm-hmm. I think that's huge because it was in production, right? They were in construction for a few years. So, there was a lot of hype about it, going up. And I remember every time I drove by the freeway and I see, okay, they got this up now. They got this up now. Man, pretty soon we're going to have some home games there and it's going to be electric. And but just to know that they named it after, Coach Diaz, man, what a legendary figure, not just at the school, but then within the community, the Collegiate. I never got to play with him. I was under Coach Randall Okimoto's regime, which was awesome. And he picked up a lot of what Coach Skippa Diaz believed in. But, I got a chance to meet Coach Skip and spend some time with him at some football games at UH. And, man, I think one of the legendary things about him was his handshake. I don't know if you knew this, Mr. Wells, but this guy's handshake was like no other. I mean, you would have thought a gorilla was grabbing your whole arm. I was like, but man, some of the players, some of the old school players, hey man, if you ever meet Coach Skip, make sure you're ready for that handshake because you might just break all your fingers in your hand. So, but his legacy, his legend, and of who he is still resonates at Farrington. It's one of those figures that's going to last forever. And so, having our own field, it's awesome. And actually, it's kind of weird because the first time I played, was there for a game, was the St. Louis game in 2019. My first time there, and I'm like, I got all my coaches on the other sideline, Coach Danny Sanchez and bunch of the other Farrington guys, and they're all looking at me because at St. Louis's coaching staff, there's 3 governors on there. Myself, Sean Pacheco, and Gary Graham, all Farrington grads. And it was kind of weird where we played Farrington. But I do think, there's a day where I'll be coaching over there one day. But for the time being, this is where God's had me, so I'm excited about it.
You mentioned Randall Okimoto and being under his regime while you were a player. In your senior season, when you told Coach O that you were going to be a Rainbow Warrior, you were going to go to UH, he's also a UH alum. What kind of advice did he give you as you got ready for that next level to play college ball?
Man, Coach Randall was a huge part of my life in high school. He was someone I looked up to, someone that I really wanted to model my life after, as far as, being a coach and just being, a productive individual in the community. I think his advice was to continue doing what I'm doing. Don't forget where you came from. Don't forget the things you've learned, and don't forget who you are. You've worked hard, you stayed humble. And, those are the two things, and you're a leader. I think those are the things I remember when I was going to UH that, my coaches were always proud of. Because these are things they preach, things that Coach Skip preach. Don't complain, don't grumble, be humble. It's a privilege to be on the football field. We don't have a right to be there. It's a privilege. And so we have to honor that and respect the people that came before us there's a lot of people that done a lot of good work for Farrington, whether it was on the field or off the field, behind the scenes or in front, that we have to appreciate, So those are the things that I've learned. And Coach Randall was super instrumental in my life during that period from high school to college. So, yeah.
Mike, we do need to take a break, so stay right there. Along with former UH football lineman Mike Lafaele, I'm Tiff Wells. You're listening to ESPN the Honolulu Fan Friday Top Story. Welcome back to episode 33 of ESPN the Honolulu Fan Friday Top Story. I'm Tiff Wells. We're here with former UH football player Mike Lafaele. Now, Mike, you redshirted in 2003. Your first official game as you came through the tunnel, I'm not sure if you remember it, September 4th, 2004 against Florida Atlantic at Aloha Stadium. What do you remember most about your first collegiate game?
Oh, that collegiate game. I played special teams. PAT. I remember I was super excited running out of the tunnel. I knew I was going to get some snaps, redshirted, so I was really looking forward to it. I was about second string on the depth chart behind Derek Favi, one of my brothers I love. Really good guy. I learned so much from him. I remember going into that game, I was in PAT, and I knew I was going to get that many reps. Just playing, and if we got up on FAU, then I would go in late in the fourth quarter. So I knew PAT that was going to be my time to get some work in. So PAT, I don't know if you're an offensive lineman, right? The ball snaps, you just block, make sure these guys don't break the line of scrimmage and block the kick, right? And so I'm lining up, and I didn't really care because Coach Kavanaugh, the guy who recruited me, I love him so much. He was a coach for that special teams, PAT. And he taught us how to block. He taught us the technique and this and that. I got in the game and I said, I'm not doing any of that stuff. I told, I think it was Kahaila Count, my teammate. He's standing right next to me. I was like, bro, I'm just going to run block. Because I was trying to get a pancake. That's one of the things I said, look, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to punish somebody. And so instead of doing what Coach Cav taught us and blocking, for the kicker, at the snap of the ball, the guy that was lined up in front of me, he wasn't ready for it, right? Because most guys on PAT, they'll go in and the ball snapped, they'll just raise their hands and, they're off the field. On the defensive side, most guys don't really rush. And so what I did was, at the snap of the ball, I just run block and just took the guy that was in front of me and literally drove him to like the goalpost and put him on his back. And then I came off the field and I was so fired up, so excited about it. And I did it a couple more times. But that guy was ready for me by the second rep. So that was one of the things I remember, man. It was my first game. And I got scoldings for that from Coach Cav. He's like, what in the world are you doing? I think he was upset about it. But at the same time, he loved the fire that I brought. Because nobody else was doing it. I was like, man, I'm not going to go out there and just stand around. Like, that's such a waste. I'm going to go out there and get some work, while I can. And so he scolded me and said not to do that again. I think I did it a couple times, but after that, that's one of the things I remember. It's so weird. That was funny.
Is it pretty cool, like when you're watching football on a Saturday or a bowl game or what have you, and you see these big time stadiums, because you got to play at Spartan Stadium at Michigan State, Bryant Denny over at Alabama. Is it cool when you watch big time football in a facility where you look at it and says, man, I got to play there one day?
Yeah, no, it's kind of surreal too when we're there at these games, like, because especially for the Alabama game, that one in 06, I remember. I think we were the first ones to play in that new stadium, if I'm not mistaken. But we went there for the walkthrough and we was like super shocked on how huge this thing was, right? And then we didn't really grasp how amazing it was until game day when you're running out of the tunnel and you see that every seat is filled. I mean, it's surreal, but at the same time, when I'm watching in the game, when I watch it on TV now, I'm like, holy crap, I played there, And I mean, going and playing in stadiums like that, it's an amazing experience. Playing in the Superdome for the Sugar Bowl too was was out of this world. I mean, like I remember looking up at the top, very top, and people look so tiny. I'm like, God, I was just like, what? Where are we? You know? But yeah, playing these big time games, and a small kid coming from Collegiate, it's just an eye opener of what's out there. There's so much opportunities out there for these young generations of kids who love the game of football. And Hawaii's great. I love my school and my team, but man, like the Marcuses of the world, the Tuas of the world, they're going out there and they're totally taking full advantage of what's available for this generation out there. And to see these young kids and young men go out there and be successful, not just on the field, but off the field as well, is super encouraging for me. And I'm blessed by it, just like everyone else in the community.
We mentioned one of your really good friends was a running back on the team, Nate Lawa. Now, Your head coach, June Jones, always said his perfect offensive scheme would be to never run the ball. Did you ever feel bad for Nate if he never got to run the ball in a game?
Nate Lawa, that guy. I love that guy, man. That's my man right there. And I'm so on defense, right? Offense always got the credit, right? Defense was the ones that would go in and manage the game, so to speak, right? And make big plays when we could. But, man, our offense stole the show all the time. And so for me, every time I come off the field, especially in 2006, like I wouldn't go and sit on the bench. We would meet up and huddle up and go over our game plan, and I would immediately come back to the sideline just so I could watch Colt and Nate go crazy with the football. And so, yeah, I don't know if there was a game where he didn't touch the football. I think in our offense, right, I think he, those shovel pass is considered a pass, but it's more like a run than it is a pass because he's coming from behind the line of scrimmage. So, but, man, he was, super electrifying. One of the guys that just keeps you on your toes. I mean, a guy that big that could run that fast, you would think he would just go and run people over, but he had the moves, man. He could shake people off too. So, and he could leave people in the dust, man. Remember that Utah State game where he just burned everyone? I mean, he just gashed everyone. And then almost slipped in the tunnel. I think he was running too quick. He couldn't stop himself. So, but yeah, man, it was a blessing to be a part of that team with Colt and all the things that he's done. So
that bowl game against Arizona State in 2006, and you guys were down at halftime. Of course, everyone remembers the big hit by Leonard Peters. Colt Brennan did his thing in the second half, the late Colt Brennan. But how about the performance of Jason Rivers with over 300 yards catching, 14 receptions? How special of a group was that 2006 team?
Yeah, it's probably one of the best teams, I think in school's history. I think you could probably line us up against any team that year. And we're definitely competing against them. Like we lined up, we played Alabama. We should have won that game. We lost to Boise. We should have won that game. And we lost to Oregon State. I felt like we should have went undefeated 2 years in a row. But Jason Rivers, man, that guy was clutch, and just I think everyone on that offense, I think Coach Jones had a really good grasp on everyone's strengths and weaknesses, right? He knew where to put certain guys, and guys knew how to get open. They just had a really good connection, like it was like the flow that they had. I mean, you can't coach that up. There's a lot of bonding off the field, right? A lot of trust that you got to have off the field, a lot of chemistry within the locker room. That's how all these things work, man. I think people think, it's just a bunch of X's and O's. You run here, you run there, you catch the ball. I mean, you really got to trust and believe that when I let this ball go, you're going to be in that spot, And if I hand you off the ball, man, I'm expecting you to go get a first down. So we had that kind of chemistry. You definitely saw it in our offense, and it helped us on defense too. And so that 2016 was extremely special, very, very special.
We talked about Coach Jones and how he would always look and find players in places you wouldn't normally find. And a couple of those players came from the men's basketball team. You're looking at Tony Akpan and also Ikaika Alama Francis. When you first heard that basketball guys we're going to be coming over onto the football field. What was your initial reaction?
You know, when Tony first came over to the team, I was just like, wow, this guy is humongous. Right? He was tall, and then he started training. He started training like how we, football players train. I like how basketball players train. I'm not saying anything about basketball players, but I'm just saying, the training is totally different. I remember, I think at his peak, like physically, Tony was 6'9", 300 pounds. I mean, this guy was just unbelievable. I'm like looking at him, I'm like, holy smokes. Like, what? I mean, he looked like an action figure. But yeah, to see the success that they've had on the field, I mean, it just goes to show you that Coach Jones was one of those guys, right, that just had an eye for talent. Like, he could look at someone and say, look, I think you would have a pretty good shot at making this football team and being successful. I remember when the first time he said in a meeting that Ikaika Lama-Francis was going to get drafted. And this is before he became Ikaika Lama-Francis, right? Everyone kind of knew him as, the guy from the basketball team that didn't make it. But I remember he was making progress on the field. He was putting some weight on, putting some muscle on. And the first time Coach Jones said in the meeting, it's funny because I don't know if you knew this, but Coach Jones would always do that. He would just say, man, this guy's going to get drafted. Like, oh, Jake Ingram's going to make the NFL. He would say stuff like that. And we would just look at him and be like, what are you talking about, man? And he said that about Ikaika before he was, who he became. And, it just goes to show you how good Coach Jones was with seeing talent, having an eye for talent and the potential, right? And I think that's a quality to have as a coach, right? To look at someone and say, all right, look at your physical attributes, watch you run around, see you do some things, whether it's on the basketball court or on the football field or even in the weight room, and say, all right, man, this guy's gonna be. I think this guy can be a player. I think that speaks volumes as a coach. And I think that's an attribute that some coaches, I guess, lost sight of over the past few years. And I don't know if that's because of this generation and social media. You can do a lot of special effects to make yourself look good, Tiff, but back then, I think Coach Jones had a really good grasp on finding talent.
Dan Kelly kicks the game-winning field goal at Nevada in 2007. Did you watch the kick? And where were you when that play happened?
Wait, which game was this? For the
This was in 2007. Dan Kelly with the game-winning field goal at Nevada.
At Nevada, yeah, I was about to say. We were all on the sideline holding each other's hands. Everyone. We were all linked up. And I was literally praying. And I watched the entire thing. And man, what a crazy game. Colt wasn't in there. I think Grunke started that game, finished that game. Our defense came up big in a lot of situations in that game, but Dan Kelly was clutch, man. That entire year, I mean, every kick he made mattered, and I don't think he gets enough credit for it because, man, what an awesome job he did. I mean, he could have missed that kick and we wouldn't be talking right now about that. So it's always great to have a kicker that you trust his leg, you trust his confidence that he's going to put it through the uprights and win a big game for you. And that's what Dan Kelly was. It's funny, man. That guy was he's just like most uncanny guy, man. But you wouldn't think he was a football player, if you looked at him. But man, what a big time player he was for us in that year.
You talk about trust, you talk about big time players, and of course, we can't forget about your former quarterback, the late Colt Brennan. Tragic news coming out of California last week. The passing of Colt Brennan. What did Colt mean to you, and what will you always remember about him?
Colt was a brother to me. He's a brother to all of us that was on those teams. The guy had a heart of gold. Not too many people know. I think a lot of people know about Colt from what the media says and what the media portrays. But for the guys who were on those teams, 05, 06, 07, really got a chance to know who Colt truly was. I mean, that guy was always smiling. The guy could have a conversation with anyone. And he really had he was like a little kid, like his heart. The guy had so much confidence too, right? I mean, you're talking about on the field, that guy, he could command the room. There was never a doubt that he would be he would go into a game and win it for us. But off the field, man, this guy was, he could light up the room just by being there. He like I said, he wasn't very judgmental about anyone. I mean, he accepted people for who they were, and I think I think because of his spirit, I think people loved him. The people from Hawaii, they accepted him. They called him his own, and I think he fell in love so much with this place that never wanted to leave, man. And I understand why. So that's one of the things I always remember about Colt. I spent a lot of time on him before he moved back, to California. I didn't know he was off island, out of state. And so when the news broke, I was really heartbroken about it. And so I think for me, that's one of the things I remember for Colt is that, he was my brother. He was a brother to all of us, and he'll be deeply missed.
You played in Aloha Stadium both in high school and in college. You coached there in high school as well. Recently announced that the stadium is condemned. It's going to be torn down. The team will be playing home games on campus at TC Ching Athletic Complex. What are your thoughts on the venue change for Hawaii football, and how can that attract more students maybe to watch their friends play football on campus?
Yeah, and I'm excited for it. I think now we're really going to get that college feel, right? We've, like you mentioned before earlier, we go to these schools and, man, you get this college atmosphere where you get the entire hometown involved, and they just love it. But, and for Hawaii, being at the Aloha Stadium, we never really had that student body to give you that college feel. It's not on campus, which was still cool. I mean, going to the Aloha Stadium, don't get me wrong, man, I love playing that place. But it's going to be interesting to see at the capacity that they can hold. And then it should draw more of the students, right? Being on campus and really get that college vibe. And I think it's going to help the team more. You're going to have that fans. It should be so. I'm anticipating for every game to be sold out. And so you're really going to get that vibe of like a really college town vibe that I think is going to help the football team and the football players. Is that, over the years, right? Because when we played, I mean, we pretty much packed the house, or at least close to it, every week, when we were playing. And so we kind of got those vibes already. But I've been hearing, over the years, oh man, if we had more fans in the stands, it would help the players. Well, then I think going into this new stage of the University of Hawaii, where they're going to have their own field on campus, I think it's going to be, we shouldn't have that excuse anymore. We should be selling out because, what's the capacity, Tiff? Is it 10,000?
They're looking at with stands and whatnot between 9,000 and 10,000.
Yeah, so with 10,000 sold out every week, I mean, that place should be rocking and rolling. The energy should be good. I mean, because I get it, man. When I played, it was always great to have a ton of fans in the stands. It always helps, right? That energy is there. And when you make a big play, momentum kicks your way because of the fans are getting you guys going. So I totally understand that. And I really hope and I pray that that's what's going to happen week in and week out, is that place is packed out and a lot of energy is going into that place when the Rainbow Warriors are on the football field making big plays, and it's only going to help them. So I'm excited for it. I can't wait to see what it looks like. I'm hoping to get there and, find myself on a seat or on the sideline, cheering the guys on. So I'm super excited about it.
Last one for you here, Mike. Do you ever catch yourself showing your kids of your playing days, both in high school and college? And what do they say when they see Dad on the screen as he watches highlights from his playing days?
So I had this DVD of my highlights somewhere in my house. I can't find it. But then I think I showed it to my son once when he was playing Pop Warner, and he wasn't really impressed. But now that he's in high school and playing for St. Louis, I think it has more merit and it carries more weight for him to see. All right, look, dude, I'm not just telling you like what to do or how to do it. I'm gonna show you. I've done it. Okay, so I always have that little thing with my son. My girls, right? Because I have 5 girls and 1 boy. My daughters, they would care less. She'd be like, "Wow, great job, Dad." They're like this. Good job, Dad. Right on. So
at least you get the one thumbs up.
Yeah, so, but the highlights, it's just for me and my memories. And I honestly, I can't find that DVD. I should have it like uploaded somewhere, but but my high school highlights, man, they're lost. I can't find them. They're on like a little cassette tape.
Maybe those cassette tapes, those DVDs, they're in the kids' toy box. You can go find those when you go home.
My daughter probably found it and then trashed it.
Mike, this has been so much fun. We know you have a lot to do today. We really appreciate the time. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. Anytime, man. Appreciate you.
For Mike Lafaele, for the rest of us here at ESPN Honolulu, I'm Tiff Wells saying thank you again for joining us here on the 33rd edition of ESPN Honolulu Fan Friday Top Story. Until next time, wear that mask, stay safe, and be socially distant.
Yeah.